The Indian Pen Show, thank you so much. Thank you, Vishalji, for inviting me. My very close friend, Sri Deepak Mejari, for taking all the pains to call me. It's a working day for me, so some thoughts are in process. Uh, who knows the power of pen more than a government officer? Naturally. Uh, Instead of answering your questions directly, I should share some of the thoughts over here. When I was a child, I used to write on my own thoughts. I had a special diary for me, and then I used to write all the, what I can do for India, what I can do in this thing, what I can do in that thing, like that. So the child's thoughts, but I liked it. When I grew up, I had another diary in which I wrote all my, uh, experiences, thoughts, or whatever I think about the other people, think about the events. One fine day, the diary fell into my mom's hands, and I was very furious that you should not invade upon my privacy. And but then she told me that some things are better not to be, written. So that was a lesson for me. But of course, after that, the writing pattern changed. Then I was in engineering college in the hostel, so I used to write to my friends, the latest friends who have departed from, one place to another, then one town to another town, and we used to write to each other. Then the role little changed, A love letter started. After that, it is all the taxation work and the, drafts and demand notices and the assessment bodies and audit notices and all that. But now I think, as Mansi ma'am also told and Dipti ma'am also mentioned, now the time to go in the reverse way. Yes, we can write, and that writing is very essential for us. As she said, that synchronization of brain, the assimilations of thoughts, they are very well, marked in your writing. If you read someone's para, you can read his mind, you can read about his personality, you can read about his experiences, and that's a wonderful thing happens with everyone. That's why I really believe. Now being a parent, I have another role. Then I should start writing to my daughter. Normally it's a WhatsApp, and the message are single letter, not even word. Hi dear, how are you? Okay dad. That's all. That's all. So I think now I should take the pains to write letters to my daughter. That will be a memory for her in lifetime, because I have preserved my grandmother's letters yet, and I cherish them. I have preserved my mother's letters who wrote it on my birthday, and I have preserved it till date. So I feel writing is very, very essential. And yes, the social media, everything is nice, but don't you think that too much acquaintance is also a little disturbing? There has to be little differentiation, little demarcation, little distance from each other, little distance from each other's thoughts. So I think that part is taken care well by the writing thing. If you write a book and leave it, someone else at some time, he will read the book. He's not communicating with you directly and not in the real time, but the message is passed on. At the same time, you are in your own world, that person is in his own world. So that way, writing is very, very crucial. So that's what I want to say on this. And again, the question. So can you repeat the question, please?
Yes, I could repeat the question. I'd asked that there is a canon there somewhere between 12 and 18%. आप क्या सोचते हैं इस स्टेटमेंट के बारे में?
It's very, very, very difficult to answer this question, but I think the questions are very
But
well,
look, but who we are talking to? Look at the person we are talking to. GST Commissioner. Has to be a difficult question. How can I let it pass?
Okay, we'll think on it. I will complete this answer.
Yes.
Let us create a movement of the writing in India again, right? And the Honorable Financial Advisor to PM office is here. So through him we can put a word to the PM and the GST Council, and yes, we can really work on it. Thank you so much.
Yes, sir, we were expecting that.
Mr. Vaidya is understandably ducking the question. And I'm not very sure whether the question was clear to everyone in the audience. So let me explain what the question was about. The GST rates are decided by the GST Council. It's not, the GST Council does not mean only union government, it has the state finance ministers also. Earlier, the GST rate on ballpoint pens was 12%. And the GST rate on fountain pens was 18%, which created an artificial incentive in favor of using ballpoint pens and not using fountain pens, because the rates get passed on. So there was an argument to unify the rates and not discriminate between ballpoint pens and fountain pens. The expectation was that the GST rate on fountain pens would be reduced to 12%, instead of which the GST rate on ballpoint pens was increased from 12% to 18%. So there is no discrimination anymore. But there is a more serious point here. The GST Council has finance ministers from various states and union government representation. And when they decide on something, they decide on the basis of what is perceived to be elitist and what is not. So if it is at 18%, and thank your stars it's not at 28%, there is a perception that writing instruments and certainly fountain pens are elitist. And I'm reiterating a point I made earlier in a slightly different kind of way. The perception is that the fountain pens that float around and people use are the Moblas and the sailors. The perception is not that there is an elegante. The perception is not that there is a clique. I'm not mentioning Wazir and Constellation. The perception is not that there are fountain pens that are less than 2,000. And this has to do with the point that I mentioned earlier about what kind of mind space does fountain pens occupy, and except the southern parts of the country, particularly Tamil Nadu, I don't think the general perception is that fountain pens are cheap. The perception wrongly is that fountain pens are expensive.